الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الأمين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. سر إخوانكم بمكتبة الواحدين بجزر البحر الكاريبي وتعاون مع عدة مساجد في الولايات المتحدة أن يرحبوا بفضيلة الشيخ سالم بامخرز حفظه الله تعالى في هذا الدرس العاشر من دروس كتاب مسائل الجاهلية للشيخ الإسلام محمد بن عبد الوهاب رحمه الله تعالى. Wahideen Publications in the Caribbean, in conjunction with several masajid in the U.S., is pleased to have with us our noble Sheikh Saalm, may Allah preserve him, in the 10th of the classes in the explanation of مسائل الجاهلية, or matters of the days of ignorance, by Sheikh al-Islam Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab. May Allah have mercy upon him. فليتفضل شيخنا مشكورا مأجورا.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد، نواصل درسنا في كتاب مسائل الجاهلية مع إخواننا في مكتب الموحدين في البحر الكاريبي وجزر في ذلك الموضع. ودرسنا هذه الليلة يبدأ في ذكر المسألة 21. قال الشيخ محمد بن عبد الوهاب التميمي النجدي رحمه الله تعالى في كتابه مسائل الجاهلية، قال: المسألة 21 تعبدهم بالمكاء والتصدية. يقصد الشيخ رحمه الله تعالى أن أهل الجاهلية يعبدون الله تعالى بالبدع والخرافات. فكان أهل الجاهلية في مكة عندما جاء الرسول عليه الصلاة والسلام كانوا يتعبدون الله تعالى عند الكعبة والبيت الحرام بالمكاء والتصدية. والمكاء هو الصفير بالفم، والتصدية هي التصفيق بالأيدي والأكف. فقال الله تعالى عنهم قال: وما كان صلاتهم عند البيت إلا مكاء وتصدية. أي أن المشركين كانوا يتعبدون الله تعالى عند الكعبة المشرفة بالصفير والتصفيق، وهذا فيه سوء أدب مع الله تعالى وعدم إجلال لهذا المكان الذي شرفه الله تعالى وهو البيت الحرام. ولكن من جهل هؤلاء وضلالهم وبعدهم عن العبادات المشروعة للخلق، إذا أرادوا تعبد الله تعالى يفعلون هذه المنكرات من تصفيق وتصفير وغناء وأيضا كشف عورات. وقد كانوا في الجاهلية يطوفون الكعبة عراه، وهذا عند كل أهل الجاهلية. ولذلك ترى اليوم عبدة النصارى واليهود في كنائسهم ومعابدهم يستعملون الغناء والموسيقى والأناشيد والترانيم، وكل ذلك من أعمال الجاهلية التي لا تمت إلى عبادة بصلة، وإنما هي أهواء. وكذلك عند أمة الإسلام ترى أهل التصوف من أهل الضلال مولعون بالأناشيد وضرب الطبول والدفوف والمزامير في المساجد، والاحتفالات المنكرة في دور العبادة، وهذا أيضا يمتد إلى جاهلية، فإن هذا ليس من صفات أهل الإسلام، ولا سيما في دور العبادة، وإنما تجل دور العبادة وتعظم بذكر الله والقرآن والصلاة والعبادات بكل أنواعها، لا تكون محل تصفير ورقص وغناء وأمور لا تليق بالإنسان أن يفعلها في بيته، فضلا أن يفعلها في بيت من بيوت الله تعالى، والله المستعان. تفضل.
Our Shaykh Ta'ala began by mentioning the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful, praising Him, the Lord of everything in existence, and invoking His peace and blessings upon our Messenger, His family, companions, and all those who follow their guidance until the day of resurrection. We said we're continuing our class in the book مسائل الجاهلية, or the matters of the days of ignorance, with our brothers at Wahidin Publications in the Caribbean and elsewhere, and we've reached the 21st matter of the text. In it, the author of the book, Shaykh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab al-Tamimi said that from the matters of Jahiliyyah is that they consider whistling and clapping to be acts of worship. This is that the people of Jahiliyyah, they used to worship Allah with bid'ah. They would innovate ways, invent new ways of worshiping Allah. And they would even worship Allah with ways of superstition. And this was from the characteristics of the people of Jahiliyyah. In Mecca, when the Messenger ﷺ came, the Quraysh, the people of the pagan idolaters, were worshipping Allah at the Kaaba, and the way that they would worship, some of the ways that they would worship, was by whistling and clapping their hands. So Allah says, وَمَا كَانَ صَلَاتُهُمْ عِنْدَ الْبَيْتِ إِلَّا مُكَاءً وَتَصْفِيًا, that their prayer at the house, meaning the house of Allah, the Kaaba, was nothing other than whistling and clapping. And so the mushrikun considered these acts of worship. They considered whistling and clapping at the Kaaba, the place which Allah has made a sacred place. They consider these acts of worship. And this is extremely poor etiquette and poor manners with a place that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself has deemed a sacred place. And so they were worshipping Allah with acts of worship that were never legislated by Allah. And when the people take this approach and consider it acceptable to worship Allah however they want, not in the way that He has legislated, but in any way that they feel like, then they will start doing the most heinous of things, the most filthy things, and consider them acts of worship. They will even get naked as acts of worship, as they would do in the times of Jahiliyyah, making tawaf, circling the Kaaba with absolutely no clothes on whatsoever. Likewise, you will see in our day and time the Christians and Jews in their churches and the likes using singing and music as forms of worship. And singing and music and dancing have nothing to do with worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Never did their prophets teach them to worship Allah in this way. They are simply following their own desires. Likewise, in Islam, from amongst the followers of this ummah, you will find people, because of their ignorance, falling into these affairs of ignorance. You will find that the Sufi sects, that they sing as part of their worship. They consider this to be an act of worship. They're singing an nasheed and beating drums and blowing whistles and the likes. And they do this in the masjid. They do this in the masjid. And this is without a doubt a reproachable act, and something that finds its roots and origins in the ways of the people of Jahiliyyah, and it has nothing to do with Islam whatsoever. The houses of Allah, the places of worship, are to be places which are respected. They are to be places where Allah is remembered, and His book, the Quran, is recited, and salah is made to Him. And they should never be places which are turned into nightclubs where dancing and music and singing and clapping and whistling is made an act of worship. And so, any respectable human being would be ashamed of doing this in his own house, not to mention doing so in the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. تفضل شيخ.
قال الشيخ: المسألة 22. قال: إنهم اتخذوا دينهم لهوا ولعبا. وهذه المسألة لها صلة بالمسألة السابقة، أن كل من ابتعد عن دين الله وعن شرع الله وما يجب أن يكون عليه المتعبد لله تعالى، إذا ابتعد عن ذلك توغل في اللهو والعبث. ولذلك كثير ما يذكر الله تعالى في كتاب العزيز عن أهل الجاهليات، عن أهل الضلال، عن النصارى، وعن اليهود، وعن المبتدعة، إنهم اتخذوا دينهم لهوا ولعبا. الدين عبادة وموعظة وتعليم وإرشاد وآداب وعلاقات مع الناس، دوائر يعين بعضهم البعض ويأمرون بالمعروف وينهون عن المنكر بما جاء من مناهج شرعية توقيفية. لكن أهل الضلال يحولون هذه العبادات إلى شيء من اللهو، ولذلك يكثر في هذه العصور خاصة عند أصحاب المناهج الحزبية من الإخوان المسلمين ومن سار على دربهم من أهل الحزبيات ومن العلمانيين، أنهم يعطون الأناشيد دورا هاما في الدعوة، والمسابقات الكروية والمسرحيات والنشاطات، بعيدا عن الدعوة الصحيحة وتعليم الناس وتربيتهم على القرآن والسنة. شغلوا الشباب بهذه الأناشيد وهذه المسرحيات وهذا العبث، وهذا من اتخاذ الدين له ولعب، فلم يربوا أجيالا على القرآن والسنة وعلى منهج الصحابة والسلف الصالح، لكن ربوهم على شيء من هذا اللهو واللعب والعبث والتعلق بلهو الدنيا ولعبها وأغانيها، كما أسلفنا في حال الصوفية وأصحاب الفرق الضالة. هكذا أغاني وضرب دفوف وموسيقى وألعاب، كل هذا خارج عما ينبغي أن يكون على المسلم. لا بأس للمسلم أن يكون عنده شيء من وقت للرفاهية وللنزهة ولقول الشعر الرصين، الحث على الجهاد، الحث على الأخلاق، كما كان يفعل حسان ابن ثابت رضي الله عنه في عهد الرسول عليه الصلاة والسلام، فينشد الشعر في مسجد الرسول، لكنه شعر للدفاع عن الإسلام وإذكاء روح الجهاد وإذكاء الآداب في الإسلام، ليست أناشيد فيها تمايل وموسيقى ومسرحيات وعبث من هذا الأمر. الله المستعان. نعم.
the 22nd matter from the matters of Jahiliyyah, mentioned by the author, rahimahullah, is that these people, the people of Jahiliyyah, would take their religion as a joking matter. And this has a direct relationship to the 21st matter, which has to do with whistling and clapping as acts of worship. Whenever you find people distancing themselves from the deen of Allah and what He has legislated, you will find that they come closer to worshipping Allah in ways that are not approved of by Allah. And when they do so, they will stop taking the religion, which is a serious matter, and start making it a joking matter. Many times in the Quran, Allah Azza wa Jalla mentions about the people of Jahiliyyah that they took their religion as a joking matter. And so the people of misguidance, the Christians, the Jews, and other than them, they took their religion and they made their religion a big joke. The affair of religion is something serious. It's an admonition. It is education. It is guidance. It is etiquettes and morals. It is relationships with other people. It is enjoining the good and forbidding the evil. And everything which has been revealed in the Sharia. And this is something which is tawqifi. It's something that there is a limit to it. The only thing that enters into it is what was revealed. We don't have the right to make any additions to it. There's something which has its limits, set limits by Allah. However, the people of misguidance, they don't respect these limits. They want to make additions and subtractions according to their own desires. And so they turn worship into play. They make the religion a joking matter. And this is especially the case in our day and time with the different Hizbi groups such as the Ikhwan al-Muslimin, the Muslim Brotherhood, and all of those who follow in their footsteps, such as the secularists. What do they do? What do they do as part of their religion? They go to extremes, trying to make anashid, these so-called Islamic songs. They go to extremes and trying to make these a part of worshipping Allah, with singing songs. They also go to extremes in making all of these other recreational activities forms of worship. So they consider playing ball a form of worship. They consider having plays where people are acting out parts, plays of worship. Different recreational activities, they make these acts of worship. And this is very far from the true call, the true da'wah, the true invitation to the religion of Allah. They have busied the youth with singing these songs and acting in these plays and playing these games, such that they have no time left for learning, preaching, and inviting to the religion of Allah. They have taken their deen as a joking matter. And so instead of cultivating and upbringing generations of youth upon the Quran and the Sunnah and the teachings of the Salaf of the Ummah, they have made their religion a big joke, made their religion a big amusement. They've turned their masajid even into places of amusing and entertaining the people. And so their acts of worship are singing these songs. And they have done the same thing as the misguided Sufi sects have done. Playing music, playing games. And we don't say that it's not permissible for a Muslim to have some recreation once in a while. That's permissible. A Muslim may enjoy himself and have fun and relax once in a while. A Muslim may even, for example, have some poetry, write or recite some poetry. Poetry which has good, upright meanings. For example, poetry which encourages people to fight jihad. Poetry which encourages people to have good morals and upright character. Poetry which defends the religion of Islam. This is permissible, and it's even encouraged in the religion. In fact, the Sahabi Hassan ibn Thabit radiallahu anhu, this is what he did. He was a poet, and he wrote poetry in defense of Islam, in defending the honor of Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so, all of this is permissible. However, we find that the misguided groups go to extremes in it. And instead of taking the religion as something serious and using recreation as a side activity, they make the whole religion a big game and a big song. And Allah's help is sought. تفضل شيخنا.
قال الشيخ رحمه الله تعالى بعد ذلك: المسألة 23 قال أن الحياة الدنيا غرتهم، فظنوا أن عطاء الله منها يدل على رضاه، كقوله تعالى حاكيا عنهم: قالوا نحن أكثر أموالا وأولادا وما نحن بمعذبين. هذا فيه بيان اغترار أهل الجاهلية بالدنيا، وظنهم أن من أغناه الله تعالى ووسع عليه في الرزق أن الله يحبه، وهذا ليس بقاعدة صحيحة، فإن الله يعطي الدنيا من يحب ومن لا يحب، وأما الدين فإن الله لا يعطيه إلا من يحب، كما قال الرسول عليه الصلاة والسلام. أهل الجاهلية أهل الكفر تجدون أن الله تعالى يمد لهم ويغنيهم ويعطيهم من خيرات الدنيا الكثير، وذلك استدراج لهم، وهم يظنون أن إمداد الله لهم بالغنى والصناعات والأموال والجاه، يظنون أن هذا محبة من الله لهم وأنه يحبهم وأنه فضلهم على الفقراء، وهذا ظن باطل. ولذلك كانوا يقولون الجاهلية الذين أنكر عليهم الله تعالى في القرآن، قال الله تعالى عن قولهم: وقالوا نحن أكثر أموالا وأولادا وما نحن بمعذبين، أي لا يعذبنا الله تعالى يوم القيامة، لأن نحن أكثر أموال وأكثر أولاد والله يحبنا. قل إن ربي يبسط الرزق لمن يشاء، رد الله عليهم. قل يا محمد إن ربي يبسط الرزق لمن يشاء ويقدر ولكن أكثر الناس لا يعلمون. ثم قال: وما أموالكم ولا أولادكم بالتي تقربكم عندنا زلفى. الغني لا يظن أنه محبوب عند الله تعالى، ربما يكون من أبغض الناس إلى الله تعالى. انظروا إلى قارون كم كان غناه، وإلى فرعون وإلى هامان وإلى كم كانوا أغنياء، وإلى قوم هود وإلى قوم عاد وإلى قوم ثمود كم كانوا أغنياء وينحتون من الجبال بيوتا ومن السهول قصورا. ماذا فعل بهم الله تعالى؟ يوم أن كفروا مع غناهم وثروتهم أخذتهم الرجفة، ومنهم أخذته الصاعقة، ومنهم من طغى بالطوفان، ومنهم من أخذته عاصفة، أهلكهم الله تعالى. ولم يدل ذلك الغناء الذي عندهم أنهم مكرمين عند الله تعالى. فلذلك ليس الغنى عند الناس ظاهرة رضا من الله تعالى لأحد، وإنما إذا رضي الله تعالى عن عباده وفقهم لتوحيده وعبادته. يقول الرسول عليه الصلاة والسلام: من يريد الله به خيرا يفقهه في الدين. انظروا إلى حال الرسول عليه الصلاة والسلام والصحابة، كانوا أفقر الناس، يصيب الفقر والفاقة، وهم أكرم الناس وأكرم الخلق عند الله تعالى النبيين والصحابة. والكفار يسرحون ويمرحون في النعم، لكن ذاك استدراج من الله تعالى لهم. عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله تعالى عنه عندما جاء إلى النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام وجعله نائم ووجده نائم على حصير حتى أثر الحصير في جسده. فبكى عمر قال يا رسول الله الحصير يؤثر في جسدك، وكسرى وأساطير الرومان ينعمون في الأموال. فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قبل من عمر قال يا عمر ألا ترضى أن تكون لهم الدنيا ولنا الآخرة؟ هذا الغنى والثراء الله تعالى ما يظلم أحد، إذا اجتهد إنسان أصاب، ولكن هذا استدراج لهم. أما من أحبه الله تعالى فإنه يعطيه من الدنيا ويعطيه أكثر من الآخرة، ويهديه إلى التوحيد، يهديه إلى الدين، يهديه إلى الأعمال الصالحة، إلى إكرام الفقراء وإخراج الزكاة وأعمار المساجد وأعمال الخير. وهكذا إن كان ظل فقيرا وهو على إيمان وتوحيد وهدى وأخلاق، هذا ينعم يوم القيامة في جنات عدن، يموت يدخل الجنة. ولكن أهل الغنى الذين كفروا بالله تعالى ماذا يلاقون؟ وإن أن تخرج الروح منهم فهم في عذاب. قال الله تعالى عن فرعون النار يعرضون عليها عشيا بكرة وعشيا، النار يعرضون عليها بكرة وعشيا في قبورهم، ويوم القيامة أدخلوا آل فرعون أشد العذاب. بل أن الله أهلكهم في الدنيا، أهلك فرعون قارون بأمواله فلو خسفنا بداره الأرض. وهكذا ذهبت الأموال وذهب الغنى، فذهب الضلال الذي يقولون أن الغنى هو محبة لهم. لا والله، الله يحب من عبده من أطاعه، وإن أعطاه المال أو لم يعطيه. فضل الله عظيم، ولكن الفضل الأعظم ما يكون لهم من النعيم الأبدي السرمدي يوم القيامة. ولهذا الكفار الذين بطلوا في الدنيا ولعبوا فيها لهم جهنم يصلون فيها خالدين مخلدين وحياة سرمدية. والله المستعان. نعم. تفضل.
The 23rd matter, which describes the people of Jahiliyyah, is that this worldly life deceived them. So they believe that Allah giving people material things is evidence of Him being pleased with them, such as when they said, we have more wealth, more children, and we shall not be punished. Allah said this, describing their situation. This is what the people of Jahiliyyah think. But because they have more wealth, more children than others, this is proof that they will not be punished in the afterlife. And so they were deceived by the material things of this worldly life. And they thought that whoever Allah gives riches, then automatically Allah loves such a person. And this is far from the truth. Allah gives this dunya to who He loves and to who He hates. But He only gives the deen to those whom He loves, as the Messenger said. The people of Jahiliyyah, on the other hand, thought that by Allah giving people of the good things of this world, the material things, this was proof of Him loving them. And that's not the case necessarily. It could be many times. We have so many examples from the Quran showing that people were given riches, yet this was only istidraj. This was only Allah using these things to lead them farther and farther away from the truth because of the evil that He knew was already in their souls. And so the people of Jahiliyyah thought that being given riches and wealth and prestige and children was a sign that Allah loved them. The reality is that Allah gave them these things and He loves many people more than He loves them. In fact, He may have given these things to people whom He hates. And so, as they said, Allah cited them saying in the Quran, we have more wealth and more children and we shall not be punished. Allah refuted this. Allah refuted this. And He followed up this statement of theirs saying, قُلْ إِنَّ رَبِّي يَبْسُطُ الرِّزْقَ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ وَيَقْدِرُ. Say, indeed my Lord spreads out the provisions to whomever He wants, to whomever He wishes, or He restricts it. وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. But the majority of people simply do not know. He then said, وَمَا أَمْوَالُكُمْ وَلَا أَوْلَادُكُمْ بِالَّتِي تُقَرِّبُكُمْ عِنْدَنَا زُلْفَى. And it is not your wealth nor your children that bring you closer to us in status. And so, a rich person could be one of the people who is hated most by Allah. Look at the examples that we have of this in the Quran. Qarun, and Fir'aun, and Haman, the richest of people, and the people hated most by Allah. Just look at the nations that were the rich nations. The people of Hud, Ad, and Thamud, they were rich people. Yet Allah hated them and He destroyed them in spite of their riches. The riches were not a sign of Allah loving them, and they didn't protect them from the punishment of Allah. Look at the ways in which Allah destroyed these nations. He destroyed some of them with earthquakes, others with hurricanes, others with a loud sound. And so their riches and wealth were of no benefit to them and helped them, and were of no avail against them, no avail against the punishment of Allah. And so being rich is not a sign of Allah being pleased with a person. The sign of Allah being pleased with a person is Allah blessing that person to follow His guidance, practice His religion, and understand His religion. The Messenger ﷺ said, whomever Allah wants good for him, He gives him fiqh in the deen, gives him a deep understanding of the religion. So this is a sign of Allah wanting good for a person, not wealth, not money. Look at the financial situation of Allah's Messenger ﷺ and his Sahaba, the best of people. They were the poorest of people and the most beloved of people to Allah. And then look at the disbelievers, the ones who are swimming in the blessings of Allah. They are floating upon blessings and blessings of financial gain and material things. Yet this is nothing other than istidraj. It's nothing other than them becoming engrossed in material things, forgetting about their obligations to their Lord. And these material things are a reason for them being punished, not a blessing in the long run. When Umar radiallahu anhu came and saw the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam asleep once, he was sleeping on a woven mat, and it was a hard, coarse mat, not a soft mattress. It was so hard, in fact, that it left marks on the side of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Umar radiallahu anhu began to cry. And the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam realized that he was crying. He asked him why. Umar radiallahu anhu said that the kings of the Romans and the Persians, they're living it up. They have all these riches, in spite of the fact that they are following falsehood. And you, the Messenger of Allah, the one preaching the truth, are in such a poor state. The Prophet ﷺ responded to him saying, are you not pleased with them having the dunya and us having the akhirah? So this wealth that they were given was nothing other than istidraj, leading them farther and farther away from the path of their Lord. If a person happens to be given wealth, and he uses that for the sake of the deen, in the path of Allah, building masajid, and giving charity to the poor and the orphans, and spending in the different ways that are praiseworthy in the deen, then this is great. This is great. However, riches do not always equal good. A poor person and this rich person who is spending in the way of Allah could use this as a means of getting to Jannah. But it's not the only means. A poor person who has nothing to spend could be in the same rank as in Jannah with that person, or in an even higher rank, depending on his righteous deeds. So Allah says, النار يعرضون عليها غدوا وعشيا ويوم القيامة أدخلوا آل فرعون أشد العذاب. The fire will be presented to them in the morning and in the evening. And on the day of resurrection, Allah will command the angels to enter, cause the people of Fir'aun, the richest of people, to enter the painful torment. And so this fire being presented to them morning and evening, in spite of the fact that Fir'aun was of the richest of people, shows that this is no sign of him benefiting from his wealth. no sign of Allah loving him or being pleased with him because of his wealth. This money was nothing other, and it turned out to be nothing other than a punishment. A cause for the person being punished in his grave. Other examples we have in the Quran show that because of people being rich and haughty and arrogant with their wealth, Allah caused the earth to swallow them up. And so riches are not a sign of Allah loving a person. Rather, the sign of Allah loving a person is Allah blessing that person to follow his religion, to follow his revelation, and not necessarily him being a rich person. And Allah's help us. Tafadhal, Shaykh.
وانظروا يا عباد الله إلى حال الغني الكافر والفقير العابد، كيف يكون مصيرهم يوم القيامة. فقد جاء عند الإمام مسلم عن النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام أنه قال: يؤتى برجلين من أهل الدنيا يوم القيامة، رجل أنعم الله عليه لن يرى بؤسا في حياته أبدا من الغنى الذي عنده، ورجل آخر فقير لم يرى شيئا من السعادة في الدنيا، كل حياته شقاوة. فالرجل الأول الغني الذي لن يرى بؤسا في حياته كافر بالله تعالى، والفقير الذي لن يرى سعادة في دنياه أبدا مؤمن بالله تعالى طيع. قال: فيؤتى بهذا الغني الذي لن يرى بؤسا في حياته فيغمس غمسة في النار ثم يخرج منها فيقال لها: هل رأيت سعادة هل رأيت سعادة؟ يقول: ما رأيت سعادة قط. ينسى كل السعادة التي رأى في الدنيا بغمسة واحدة في النار. فكيف بأن يكون في النار خالدا فيها مخلدا؟ ثم قال الرسول: ويؤتى بأبأس الناس لكنه مؤمن تقي لم يرى سعادة في دنياه فيغمس غمسة واحدة في الجنة فيقال له: هل رأيت شقاوة في دنياك؟ يقول: ما رأيت شيء أبدا، من غمسة واحدة في الجنة. فكيف بأن يدخل الجنة وينعم فيها نعيما سرمدي؟ اللهم اجعلنا من أهل النعيم السرمدي. تفضل.
Just look at the situation of the rich person who is a kafir, a disbeliever, and the poor person who is a mu'min. As recorded in Sahih Muslim, the Prophet ﷺ said, 2 men will be brought forth. 2 men from the people of dunya will be brought forth on the day of resurrection. One of them is a man whom Allah blessed with everything that one could possibly hope for in this worldly life. And the other was of the poorest of people and never saw any happiness during his life. He lived a miserable life. The first, that rich disbeliever, who didn't believe in Allah, will be brought and he will be dipped into the hellfire for the blink of an eye. This person who had all of these riches in this life, who never experienced any discomfort in this life, who was happy all of his life because of the material things that he was given, he spent an entire lifetime being happy and enjoying all the material things that he could possibly hope for. Yawm al-Qiyamah, he will be dipped into the hellfire for the blink of an eye. Then he will be asked, did you ever experience any pleasure whatsoever? And he will say, no, I never experienced any pleasure whatsoever. After living an entire life, the best that this life has to offer in terms of material things, after being dipped into the hellfire, he will say, I never experienced any pleasure whatsoever. If this is the case for a person who is dipped into the fire for the blink of an eye, what about a person who will spend eternity being punished in the hellfire? That second man, that poor believer, who never experienced any pleasure in this life, who had a miserable, terrible life. He will be dipped into Jannah for the blinking of an eye. Then he will be asked, did you ever experience any misery? And he will say, no, I never experienced any misery. If that is the case for a person who was only dipped into Jannah for the blinking of an eye, what about the bliss of a person who spends eternity in Jannah? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from the people who spend eternity in Jannah. تفضل يا شيخ.
ذكر الشيخ بعد ذلك مسألتين متقاربتين. قال المسألة 24 ترك الدخول في الحق من أهل الجاهلية إذا سبقهم إليه الضعفاء تكبرا وأنفة، فأنزل الله تعالى قوله ولا تطرد الذين يدعون ربهم. قال والمسألة 25 الاستدلال على بطلانه بسبق الضعفاء في قوله تعالى لو كان خيرا ما سبقونا إليه. هاتان المسألتان تتضمن أن أهل الجاهلية يتعاظمون بجاههم وما عندهم من قوة، فيسخرون من الضعفاء الذين هم أول من يهرع إلى الإيمان في كل زمان ومكان. ولذلك قال قيصر لأبي سفيان من أتباع محمد عليه الصلاة والسلام؟ قال أكثر من الفقراء والضعفاء. قال هم أكثر أتباع الأنبياء. فأهل القوة والكبر يأنفون الدخول في الإيمان والإسلام والتوحيد، يقولوا هذا دين الضعفاء. ولذلك ذكر الله في هذه الآية ولا تطرد الذين يدعون ربهم، لأنهم قالوا يا محمد إذا أردت منا أن نجلس معك اطرد الفقراء هؤلاء المساكين، نحن ما نجلس معهم، اجعل لنا يوم لهم يوم. فالله تعالى بين قال ولا تطرد الذين يدعون ربهم بالغداة والعشي يريدون وجهه ما عليك من حساب من شيء وما من حسابك عليه من شيء فتطردهم فتكون من الظالمين. اترك هؤلاء. طيب أنا يعلم هؤلاء البصرة الذي عندهم الكبر ألا يعلمون قول الله تعالى أليس الله بيعلم بالشاكرين؟ هؤلاء الضعفاء شكروا الله عبدوا الله آمنوا بالله، وأنتم أبيتم وتكبرتم وأنفتم وقلتم هذا الدين ضعفاء، ولذلك مقتكم الله تعالى. وهكذا يقولون هذا الدين يتبع الضعفاء هذا دين باطل. هذا الله بين عنهم. قال الله تعالى في قوله قال لو كان خيرا ما سبقونا، يقول لو كان هذا الدين والإسلام خير لما سبقنا إليه ضعفاء كبلال ويعني ذئب أمثاله من الضعفاء وعمار وغيرهم. فناديد قريش يقولوا نحن هذا دين الضعفاء، هذا ما هو دين يعني السادة الكرام. قال لو كان هذا الدين فيه خير ويقود إلى خير دنيا وآخرة ما كان سبقونا إلى هؤلاء الضعفاء. هذا كبر وأنفة. ثم يقول إن شاء الله تعالى بين أنؤمن لك واتبعك الأرذلون، يعني نحن نريد أن ندخل معك في الدين هذا وأتبعك من أراذل الناس ضعفاء الناس فقراء الناس مساكين عندنا من نحقرهم. هذا كبر. وماذا قال عن نوح عليه السلام؟ قال قومه قالوا النبي نوح قال وما نراك اتبعك إلا الذين هم أراذلنا بادي الرأي، يعني ما نرى إلا معك ضعاف الآراء، ما نرى معك ناس من أوجاه المجتمع. غرتهم الوجاهة، غرتهم الغلبة، يحضر الدين لأن يتبعه من الضعفاء. الله تعالى يقول وما أرسلنا في قرية من نذير إلا قال مترفوها أي أغنياءها إنا بما أرسلتم به كافرون. يكفرون دائما. الأغنياء هم الكفرة. انظروا الآن
من أغنى العالم؟ دول الكفر أم دول الإسلام؟ فتجد أن دول الكفر هي الغنية. أمريكا، بريطانيا، فرنسا، روسيا، الصين، اليابان، كلها دول الكفر هي الغنية. وأفقر الناس دول الإسلام في إفريقيا وفي آسيا وفي الدول العربية، أفقر الناس في المجتمعات، لكنهم على دين الإسلام، على تقوى، وهم أفضل الخلق لله تعالى، إنهم عبدوا الله وعرفوا الحق. والله تعالى أمد أولئك بالمال لأن سعادتهم في الدنيا، نعيمهم في الدنيا، وسيلقون يوم القيامة أشد العذاب. لما؟ لأنهم استهتروا بدين الله تعالى وتعاظموا وظنوا أن الخير عندهم وأن الشر مع هؤلاء الضعفاء الذين تبعوا الدين. وهذا من ضلالهم ومن جهلهم وكل حالات الجاهلية. انظر في كل مجتمع الجهلة هم الأغنياء، والضعفاء هم المساكين الذين يرحمون ويعطفون ويسرعون إلى الدين. ونسأل الله تعالى أن يجعلنا من عباده الصالحين وأن كنا ضعفاء. فالغنى غنى الله تعالى، والحمد والشكر لله تعالى، والحمد لله رب العالمين. حياكم الله. تفضل.
Okay. The next matters mentioned in the text by Allah, matters number 24 and 25 are similar in meaning. Number 24 is that failing to accept the truth, if the weak people lead them to it. This was the ways of the people of Jahiliyyah. The weak people and the downtrodden in society were the first to accept the religion, then they would fail to accept it. They did this out of arrogance and conceit. Thus Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed, do not turn away those who invoke their Lord. The 25th matter was that they cite as proof, the people of Jahiliyyah cite as proof of something being false, the fact that the weak are the ones to follow it. And they said, as Allah says, لَوْ كَانَ خَيْرًا مَا سَبْقُونَا إِلَيْهِ. If it were good, they would have not beat us to it. So this shows us that the people of Jahiliyyah, they consider themselves great because of their prestige, because of their power, because of their wealth. And they look down upon and belittle the poor and the weak. And every day in time, the people of Jahiliyyah do this. And thus you'll find that the majority of the followers, the prophets, the majority of the people to accept the truth are the weak, the downtrodden, the poor. That's when Pesach was asking about the situation of the Prophet. He asked one of the pagans of Quraysh, Abu Sufyan ibn Harb, he said that who are the majority of the followers of Muhammad? He replied that they are the poor and the weak. He said, being a person with knowledge of the scripture, he said, and thus are the followers of the prophets. The prophets have always been people who have been followed by the poor and weak and rejected by the rich and powerful. And they would often say, the rich and affluent people in society, they would say that their prestige and their wealth made them better than the poor in society, and thus they didn't feel that they could enter into a religion and be amongst the ranks of those poor people. They were more comfortable staying in their circles, the circles of the rich. And this Quraysh, and the Prophet ﷺ came to them giving them da'wah, and he wanted to tell them about the message of Islam. They said, okay, but those poor people who are with you, how about you teach them Islam about one day, and then the next day we'll come and we won't have to sit with them. And so they were too arrogant. They were too arrogant to sit with the poor people to hear the truth. And they wanted to a day just for them. The Salah says, وَلَا تَقْرُوا لِلَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ بِالْغَدَاةِ وَالْعَشِيِّ يُرِيدُونَ وَجْهَهُ. And don't expel, don't send out, don't turn away those who call upon their Lord, invoking their Lord, morning and evening, seeking His face, seeking to see His face. مَا عَلَيْكَ مِنْ حِسَابِهِ مِنْ شَيْءٍ. You're not responsible for their account. وَمَا مِنْ حِسَابِكَ عَلَيْهِ مِنْ شَيْءٍ. And they are not responsible for yours. وتطردهم فتكون من الظالمين. And if you were to turn them away, you would be of the wrongdoers, the oppressors. So don't turn the poor people away. If you do so, you will be a wrongdoer. Allah said, أليس الله بأعلم بالشاكرين? Is Allah not more knowledgeable of those who are thankful? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knew best those who would accept His message, worship Him, be grateful to Him, be thankful to Him. And so likewise He was thankful towards them, giving them a reward for their sacrifice. And He was not thankful for or towards the rich and affluent who refused His prophets and messengers. In spite of all their prestige and all their wealth and all their power, they get no reward in the afterlife. These people, the people who had all this wealth and power and prestige, these people of Jahiliyah, in times of old or in present times, they say when it comes to the message of the truth, وَكَانَ خَيْرًا مَا سَبَقُونَا إِلَيْهِ. If it were good, they, those poor people, wouldn't have beat us to it. In the time of the Messenger ﷺ, the people of Quraysh were saying, if that message, the message of Islam, were really true, then Bilal and Ammar and the likes of those poor people who were the Sahaba radiallahu anhum ajma'in, they wouldn't have beat us to it. We would have been the first to find it out. And so they said that that's a religion of weak people, a religion of poor people. It was because of their arrogance that they rejected the faith. Unless they said, أَنُؤْمِنُ لَكَ وَاتَّبَعَكَ الْأَرْذَلُونَ, shall we believe in you when it is the lowest of people who have followed you? Likewise, the people of Nuh alayhi salam, they rejected him, saying, وَمَا نَرَاكَ اتَّبَعَكَ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ هُمْ أَرَاذِلُنَا بَارِيَ الرَّأْيِ. And we don't see following you except those who are the lowest of us. And they did so without thinking. So Allah says, these people reject His message. And it is often the affluent in society who do so, out of their arrogance, being deceived by their wealth, their affluence, and their power. And in our day and time, nothing has changed. We look at the rich nations of the world, Italy and France and China and Japan and so on and so forth, the rich nations, they're disbelieving nations. And we find that the Muslim countries in Asia and Africa and elsewhere are the poorest of countries. Yet, the best of creation, the best of people, the believers, are at times the poorest of people. And those with the most money are at times, often, those most hated by Allah. They were given their goods, they were given their pleasure, their delights in this worldly life. In the afterlife, they shall have no pleasure. Such people thought that being given goods in this life was proof, evidence of them being upon the correct path, and how very mistaken they were. In every society, this is the case. The rich and powerful consider themselves to have like a copyright on the truth, to be the only ones who are following the truth. And they think that their riches are proof of this. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us all of His righteous servants, even if we are the poorest of people. And Allah help us all. Sallallahu Shaykh.
بهذا نكتفي إن شاء الله هذه الليلة، ونلتقي بكم إن شاء الله في الأسبوع القادم بإذن الله تعالى. وجزاكم الله خير، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. جزاكم الله كل خير شيخ. الله يحفظكم.
حياكم الله، بارك الله فيكم.